Hey there! I thought that what I would do today is not show my face for this particular review, because I would like to discuss this particular Montblanc 149, but the trick here is the nib. This is one of the specialty calligraphy nibs. So just very, very briefly, because I have reviewed a bunch of 149s, I don't think it is very interesting slash of interest to anyone to see that. But anyway, I'll try to zoom out a bit. It comes in a box. Pen was lent to me by Appelboom, 149 with the calligraphy curved nib. Fairly nice, simple box. And then if I can open it, just so you see what the box is like, you get this cute little box. There is some indication of what the nib will look like when you write with it. And then of course there is the pen in its little pen bed. Like I said, I have reviewed 149s over the years, so I really don't want to go over all the ins and outs of the pen. In case you're not familiar with the model, I'll just zoom in so you can actually see it nice and up close. In case you're not familiar with the model, it's the flagship pen of Montblanc. Of course, there are other pens they make, very fancy, limited editions, etc. But in their regular lineup, I would say this is the flagship. They always come stickered to indicate what kind of nib it is. In this case, it's not an extra fine, medium, etc. There is no such thing. There was only one grade for this nib. The 149, nice pen, piston filled, a bit bigger, not so much in length, but certainly a bit girthier than the average pen, I would say. Of course, has the peak of the Mont Blanc on there, all that stuff. But the real trick in this particular pen lies in the nib. So I thought I would just give you a little bit of information about the nib. It's 18 karat gold. I'll just whip it out so you can actually see it. It's 18 karat gold. Maybe I can zoom in a little bit. I just don't want to make you nauseous. 18 karat gold. Should I say that one more time? It's 18 karat gold. It's called the curved nib. Montblanc initially released their flex nib, calligraphy flex nib, which allows a lot of line variation. The 149 is about 740 euros without VAT. And then the curved nib, so that includes the pen, is 793 euros, not including VAT. It's 18 karat gold. Okay, I'll stop now. And it's supposed to give you a line width from medium to double broad. Now, it has the calligraphy nib engraving, those 3 lines, which I think is quite nice. And that's pretty much it. Now, what makes this nib special is that this is what we would call an architect grind. So you see, it looks like someone accidentally dropped it, but it's supposed to look that way. I would say it's that curved up aspect is kind of like a Fude nib, but so that's an upturned nib. Sorry, I can't really show that clearly, but let me zoom out a bit. Like sort of like an upturned nib. That's a Fude nib. And an architect grind is a special, sorry for the back and forth, is a special type of grind that is the opposite of an italic nib. So an italic nib would give a broad downstroke and a narrow side stroke. An architect gives a narrow downstroke and a broad side stroke. Of course, the easiest thing to do is just show you. And depending on the angle of the pen, how it is held, that effect will be a little more or a little less pronounced. So let me zoom out so we can actually see some paper. I'll start to do some writing and we'll see what we will find. So I'll first use a pretty high angle to try and do some regular writing. And as you can see, it looks like, I would say, a good medium, maybe a somewhat skinny broad nib. The ink, by the way, is Ackerman Delft's Blauw, just a washable blue. But the real trick of this nib lies in this. You ready? And this is not with any pressure. So this really is a special nib, architect ground, fine downstroke, wide side stroke. And if you are like me and you write in cursive, I don't know how useful this nib really is, because you don't really see that line variation. Really all you get is a very wide writer, so a very, very broad nib. This is fun in its own regard, for example, if you do signatures, but for everyday writing, I don't know how useful it would be. Now, of course, you could fiddle a bit with that, because by changing the angle a bit, you'll go for a finer or a wider line. This is not a flex nib, so don't expect anything in ways of flex. It's not designed for that. This really is for this kind of stuff. The best way to bring out that kind of writing is either to do, I would say, Asian calligraphy, so characters, which I can't write, so I won't, Arabic script, or Hebrew script. None of these I've mastered, so I can't really do any examples. In Western script, something like print tends to give you a nice way to use these kinds of nibs. Now, to be frank, I'm really not the person to do this. What I would recommend you to do is look at Janine Scribbles on Instagram, for example, because she's an expert with these kinds of nibs and this kind of writing. She does all kinds of cool alphabets, and I think that is by far the best illustration if you want to see what you can do with an architect. I'm not really the person to ask. Okay, so now you've seen a little bit. I mean, I don't think it makes sense to do any more writing. Like, all my writing is going to look like mega broad writing, but are there any specific likes and dislikes? Well, it's a great nib. I found it to be really, really reliable, and I like that. What I mean by that is it doesn't seem to run dry. It really keeps going well. So I think Montblanc has done a really nice job with that. I also think it adds, obviously, lots of character to your writing. I don't know this is a nib for everyday writing, unless maybe you do, say, a lot of writing in Arabic, in which case it might be better. But even then, bear in mind, you get very wide lines, right? So your writing would take up a lot of space, but those type of scripts lend themselves more for this particular grind of nib. Downsides to this nib: one is it's typically a special order nib, so don't expect every Montblanc dealer to have them in stock. And I have heard from people about the flex nib that they can have pretty long lead time. So you can really, some people have reported, I'm not saying that's typical, but I have read some reports of having to wait half a year to get this nib. Now that may have been one extreme case, but I mean still, with pandemic, shortages, etc., I don't know how fast a process it really is to obtain these, and it is expensive, right? The nib on a 149, it's almost 800 euros. So it's certainly an expensive option, but it is really fun. Now, if you say, I would really like something like this, but I don't really want to pay that amount of money, you could get any nib, including a steel nib, in something like broad or double broad, send it to a nib meister of your choice, and any nib meister will be able to grind an architect. So that is another way to go about this. Of course, it wouldn't be a Montblanc, but just saying, a nib meister can accomplish this on any nib with enough tipping on it. So that is an option. Having said that, it's a fun pen. I was very happy to try it out. I said pen, I kind of meant nib, sorry. It's certainly fun to play with. Just make sure that it fits your handwriting before you commit to something like this, because it's a fairly big investment, and like I said, it doesn't work for every type of handwriting. So there you have it. A very kind thank you to Joost for lending me the pen. I really appreciate it. I hope this was useful, and I'll gladly see you later. Bye bye.